Hi, biology students. This is going to be your video lesson for chapter 25 on segmented worms. It's section 4 of the chapter. We're not going to do the other sections in the chapter, just this one section. And then I'm going to have a virtual earthworm dissection for you to complete, since obviously you can't be here in person to do a dissection. And so this section in your book starts on page 745. And so we're going to go through the notes together. So let's go ahead and do that. So segmented worms, the scientific name for them is annelids. That's the phylum that they're in. They include earthworms and a lot of marine worms, worms that live in the ocean and in freshwater. Each of the segments that they have has structures in it for digestion, getting rid of waste, or what we call excretion, and locomotion, helping them to move. Their body symmetry is bilateral, which means that we could lay a worm down on a table and divide their body into two halves, and each half of their body would look symmetrical. We have bilateral body symmetry as humans. They have on the inside of them a body cavity, and it's called a coelom. C-O-E-L-O-M, that's how you pronounce it. It's not a vocabulary word, but you do need to know that that's what their body cavity is called, a coelom. And they have two body openings. They have a mouth and they have an anus. Okay. The coelom that I just mentioned on the inside, this is a diagram of it here, has fluid on the inside of it, sort of like a water balloon, and that fluid, the pressure from it, gives their body support. So they don't have bones, they don't have an internal skeletal system or an external skeletal system. They have this fluid pressure that supports them, and so it's called a hydrostatic skeleton, because hydro means fluid or water. And so you see the picture, this is like the fluid, this is the inside of their body. If you cut them like right there, you could see on the inside this fluid that exerts pressure on the inside to keep their shape. Feeding. I don't know if you've ever thought about earthworms and how they eat, but let's go through it real quick. They eat debris, decaying matter, dead leaves, dead plants, dead animals, dirt. They're decomposers. So the food goes into their mouth and then through the body and out their anus. And each segment, again, along the way, contains digestive tract. So after the food goes to the mouth, it goes through an organ called a pharynx. And then from the pharynx, it goes to another organ called a crop. And then that's like a storage sac that will store food and soil in it. And then from the crop, the food will go to the gizzard. The gizzard is a muscular sac, and it has little stones in it and helps to grind up their food. Of course, they don't have teeth, so they have to have something to grind their food up, and that's what the gizzard does. The food then goes into the intestines and then out through the anus. There are parasitic annelids, and they're a little different. They have pouches along their digestive tract to help hold food in for months, because of course they feed off of a host. This would be like a leech. A leech is a parasitic annelid, and it may be a while before they find another host to feed off of. So they have to have a means by which they can store food for a long period of time, and then that's what those pouches enable them to do. Okay, here's a simple diagram of the inside of an earthworm. This is the mouth, okay? It's got a brain, very simple, pharynx that we just mentioned. This is an esophagus. These little lines going across here are aortic arches, or the hearts in a worm, and then the crop and the gizzard that we talked about, and then intestines will go all the way out to the anus. In your book, there's a drawing, a diagram of a worm labeled, and it's on page 746. And so it has some of these same parts and some extra ones labeled as well. I will be uploading a diagram of an earthworm and for you to label the anatomy of it so it can help you learn it before you do the online virtual dissection. Circulation. When you talk about an animal, we talk about all the basic functions of parts of its body. Again, the worm has what we call aortic arches, and this right here, it's labeled accessory hearts. There's 5 of them, and they act like the heart, and they pump the blood, and of course they have blood vessels in their body as well. They have a closed circulatory system. So closed circulatory system means the blood travels inside of blood vessels. And there's the aortic arches I mentioned a minute ago right here. They act as the heart. Respiration, how they breathe. They breathe through their skin. They take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide through their skin. You probably learned about that in one of those videos that I posted for the class yesterday. Aquatic, that means annelids that live in the water. They have gills. And then we have that one video about when it rains outside and why they come above ground. One of the main theories is that the fact that they don't want to drown or suffocate because they breathe through their skin. And so that's one of the leading theories on why they come out when it rains outside. Excretion, how do they get rid of waste? They have structures called nephridia, which act like kidneys, and they get rid of waste in their body. And they have them in almost every segment of their body. And it also helps them to maintain that body fluid in the coelom that we talked about. So it helps them to maintain homeostasis. Their nervous system, very simple. They have a brain and nerve cords. They help them to respond to light and dark. They can respond to chemicals, vibrations. It's a very simple and not a very advanced nervous system, but they are able to respond to their environment. Muscular system. They have these interesting circular muscles that they use to squeeze the fluid in the coelom, and it enables them to grow long and thin, or scrunch up and get short and thick. And if you ever watched a worm wiggle and move, you'll notice that type of movement. And they also have something that's called setae. Those are tiny little bristles on the outside of their body, on the segments, and they help them push their body through the soil, through the dirt. And so the setae is a vocabulary word. You need to know what they are, and that's just tiny bristles that help them to move. Okay, so I'm showing you the picture here of the coelom. You have labeled the circular muscles right here, and also the setae that we mentioned right here. Reproduction. Worms are what we call hermaphrodites, and I'm hoping you learned what that was, and also in one of our videos. It means an animal that has both male and female reproductive organs, hermaphrodite. You need to know what that is. So a worm has both male and female reproductive organs. So they're not a he or a she, they're hermaphrodite, they're both. They can asexually reproduce. Like you could cut a worm and part of it off, and it could regrow and regenerate itself and stay alive. They also have sexual reproduction. They will have two worms that will line up with each other. And this says separate sexes. That's in other annelids, but it says some, including earthworms, are hermaphrodites. So I don't want you to get confused by that note. Separate sexes would be in some of the other, like the marine worms that we mentioned, but the earthworms are the hermaphrodites. So two worms will line up with each other, exchange sperm, fertilize each other's eggs, and they will develop a cocoon around a part of their body called the clitellum, and it's a thickened band of tissue near the head end of the worm. So the cocoon forms around the clitellum, and the cocoon, of course, includes the baby worms that they'll hatch out of eventually. That let me show you a picture in the book of the clitellum. Okay, back to this picture right here. Okay, this is the clitellum. Do you see that labeled? And you've probably seen this in a mature earthworm. It looks different. It's smoother, doesn't have the ridges in it, and it's thick. That's what the cocoon forms around on the outside of the worm. And then the cocoon will slide off the worm's body. And then the baby worms will finish developing and eventually hatch out of the cocoon. And that is it. That's the end of the notes, so that wasn't too bad at all. Read this section in your book. I emailed the notes to you because I could not get them to upload onto Schoology yesterday. So hopefully you received the email that has the notes on it. If you didn't, let me know. So we're going to... all we have left now is we're going to label the anatomy of a worm, review this information. It's like a quiz. It's not a test. It's going to be a quiz on this because it's only one section, and also do the virtual dissection. And then we'll be moving on to vertebrate. Worms are invertebrates. They don't have a backbone or anything. And then we're going to move on to vertebrate animals, which will include fish and amphibians. And learn a little bit extra about frogs in particular, because we used to dissect frogs. I hope y'all are doing well, and take care, hang in there, and if you have Mr. Bridges, today is one day runs into the next. Hold on. I wanted to tell you it's his birthday today. When you watch this video, today is the 21st, and so maybe by the time you watch this, which it'll be like the 22nd that you'll watch this video, but it is, next time you see Mr. Bridges, and if you have him, tell him happy birthday. I will talk to you later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.